All right, our big game of the week could have some huge college football playoff ramifications. That's right. We're talking Ohio State and Notre Dame. And for an Ohio State point of view, we've got Kevin Noon from BuckeyeHuddle.com. And also for a Notre Dame perspective, we've got John Brice from FootballScoop.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, David. I appreciate you having us.
Absolutely.
Kevin, I'll start with you. That view, goodness gracious, my friend. I know that you broke into the stadium for the show. Thank you for doing that.
I'll do anything for this show. I mean, this has nothing to do with any other aspect of my job, but Ohio Stadium, the band is warming up. Everybody's getting excited about this top 5 matchup between number 2 Ohio State, number 5 Notre Dame under the lights.
It's going to be fun, so we'll keep it there with you, Kevin. How much better is this Ohio State team this year, considering we know the offense is great, but that defense could be salty this year?
Exactly, and we had the opportunity on Tuesday to speak with defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, and he said that the defense is 100% ready. Now, is that just getting ready? Is that part of the gamesmanship? I mean, you can be ready, but they're going to have to execute. I mean, they're going to have to figure out how to go against Tyler Buckner, a quarterback there's not a lot of film on. They're going to have to figure out how to stop one of the most prolific pass-catching tight ends that I can remember seeing in a while with Michael Mayer. So, I think if this defense is considerably better than what we saw last year, this is as dangerous of a team as there is out there in the nation because we know what the offense is capable of.
John, let's talk Notre Dame. And are they going to be better than they were last year? Because I feel like in the beginning of last year, they were winning games, but they weren't convincing. They kind of found their way throughout the season. What about this year?
Yeah, David, I think so. I think particularly that Notre Dame is better this year because the Fighting Irish are so much better on the offensive line. Now, look, there's a question mark with Jarrett Patterson, the fifth-year captain for the Fighting Irish after he suffered a foot injury midway through training camp. Marcus Freeman saying on Monday that Patterson is questionable for the game, but Patterson is voted one of 6 team captains. I fully expect him to do everything within his power to be out there at left guard for Notre Dame Saturday night under the lights. And Kevin, I'll be joining you there in Ohio Stadium, the Horseshoe, for that game. I'm excited to take it in. But I do think it's a better Notre Dame team, David, Kevin, because it's so much better on both lines of scrimmage, but especially on the offensive side of the ball. Last year, the Irish, especially the first 5 to 6 games of the season, were not very good on the offensive line until Joe Alt became an anchor and the true freshman became one of their starting tackles. Now, the other true freshman, much ballyhooed from a year ago, former 5-star recruit, Blake Fisher, is fully healthy. I'm telling you right now, just like Ohio State has Paris Johnson and a couple of future NFL first-rounders on its offensive line, I think Joe Alt and Blake Fisher are future first-rounders for the Notre Dame offensive line.
Kevin, let me just ask this in the friendliest way. Can Ohio State overcome a Week 1 loss?
I think Ohio State could overcome a Week 1 loss. The thing is that we sit there, we get to about Week 9, and everybody's losing their minds over there being 8 or 9 undefeated teams without realizing that 6 of them are going to play each other, and that generally we get to the end of a season and there's 1 undefeated team, maybe 2. I mean, maybe you end up having a group of 5 team that's kind of sitting out there, but it all sorts itself out. Now, what Ohio State can't overcome is if Ohio State comes out here and lays an egg and just looks really bad and just doesn't look like any progress has been made because, honestly, this is, while Ohio State does have some top 25 teams on its schedule, this is a top 5 matchup, and even Week 1 and Week 14 are so far apart, but you can leave a lasting impression.
John, I'm going to ask you a similar question, but considering what some people think the spread is and going to be come game time, can Notre Dame, if the goal is making the college football playoffs, overcome a bad loss?
Notre Dame could overcome a bad loss. I don't expect that to be the case Saturday night. I expect this to be anybody's contest going late into the fourth quarter because I think there's great talent and great coaching on both sides of the football. But to Kevin's point about Ohio State's schedule, Notre Dame's is not like that because Notre Dame's the only team in the country opening up with 2 matchups against top 4 teams because Notre Dame has number 2 Ohio State this weekend and number 4 Clemson a little bit later in the season. Notre Dame also has a neutral site contest with BYU in Las Vegas, and it has a game late in the year at USC, and that's a USC team that I fully expect to be challenging for a college football playoff berth in year 1 under Lincoln Riley. So Notre Dame probably has a schedule more balanced to give it an avenue back into college football playoff discussion if there's a loss this weekend. And I think, frankly, This matchup this weekend is going to be more of what we're talking about for the next several years in college football. The playoff is going to expand to 12 teams. Conference affiliation is going to mean less and less. Strength of schedule is going to be more and more. That's from all the coaches I'm talking to in ACC, Big 12, SEC. That's the future of the sport. And so hopefully, for all of our sakes, we get more Notre Dame, Ohio State type matchups moving forward, because it's going to be a 12-team playoff that doesn't penalize a single loss the first week of September.
All right, John, let's keep it with you real quick. What is the key to victory for Notre Dame?
Oh, it's shortening the game for sure, David. It's shortening the game on both sides of the football. Notre Dame cannot allow Ohio State to have some of its signature 80, 75-yard scoring drives that take like a minute 40 off the clock. And that means that Notre Dame can't be giving up chunk plays the size of lakefront real estate. And the flip side of that is Notre Dame has to be able to assert its will on the line of scrimmage offensively. And that means those guys I referenced, Blake Fisher, Joe Alt, Jarrett Patterson, if he's able to play, Zeke Correll, the new starting center. That's a big one to watch. Josh Lugg, a 6-year senior at right guard. What can they do with Michael Mayer, with Kevin Ballman, and even Sherwood, the third-string tight end, that they do some different things with in motion? All of those things are about sending a physical message for Notre Dame. Physicality, especially on the offensive side of the ball, therefore limiting possessions for Ohio State, to me, is the number one key for the Fighting Irish.
Kevin, what about the key point for Ohio State to take victory?
I think it all comes down to the running game on both sides. Ohio State needs to be able to run the ball. I think if you look in the games that Ohio State had some issues, Oregon, Michigan, even Utah to a certain extent, the run wasn't there when it needed it. I think that they have to be able to get Trevion Henderson and Mayan Williams loose. And if they can do that, while Ohio State can score a lot of times in a $105, $130, maybe some prolonged drives. And then on the other side, take away Notre Dame's ability to run. Don't let Tyler Buckner beat you with his legs. Just don't make Notre Dame one-dimensional. Make them show that they can beat you by throwing the ball with Buckner, especially since the Fighting Irish are a little thin in the receiver core. Try and see if Lorenzo Styles Jr. and his homecoming back to Columbus can sit there and have a big game. But I think that it really comes down to the run game on both sides.
That is Kevin Noon, BuckeyeHuddle.com, and John Brice, FootballScoop.com. Gentlemen, thanks so much. We'll see how the game plays out, get you back on here real soon.
Appreciate it, David. Have a great day.
Absolutely.